Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are going to talk about Web3 security. Dedaub is a company that works with the Ethereum Foundation. They work with Lido, they work with Chainlink and Coinbase. So if you use Coinbase, one of the biggest exchanges in the world, chances are that you are safe because of Dedaub and because of Mark. So everyone, thank you very much for that. And a warm welcome to Mark.
Hello. I'm Mark. Hi. I'm one of the software developers at Dedaub. Just a bit about us before I get too much into things. We're a Web3 security company. Like he mentioned, we're based here in Malta. We have two co-founders, both of whom are academic researchers. So based on some of the stuff they were doing on university, it spun out into this whole company. We offer two main types of services as a company. We have our security technology, and we do a bunch of smart contract audits. Our technology, our Dedaub security suite, we have like 5,000 users on the site, and we've done over 240 security audits for different companies. Along with this, we also do a whole bunch of white hat hacking, discovering vulnerabilities, and trying to disclose them before someone can come in and take advantage of them. We've managed to secure over $2 billion of funds doing this from different vulnerability disclosures, and hopefully we'll keep on doing this. So jumping into things. Right now, there's about $100 billion of value in DeFi, spread over different protocols, different currencies, but about 100 billion total. Last year, 2.2 billion got stolen. And if you follow the trend, the number of attacks seems to be going up. So far this year, 1.6 billion has already been stolen. So there's a good chance by the end of the year, it'll be much higher than last year. If we break things down a bit further into the different types of attacks that are taking place, by far the biggest type of attack is coming from private keys being compromised. This seems to be a bit of a trend where in past years, the attacks were mostly technical. Price oracle manipulation, finding vulnerabilities in smart contracts. Now it is more cases of private keys being compromised. This comes down a lot to your classic types of Web2 vulnerabilities, where you have phishing attacks, scams, rather than the more technical Web3 stuff. Here we have a few different types of vulnerabilities. On the one hand, you have, like I mentioned, all the classic Web2 stuff. Phishing attacks, fake links, impersonation. Then you have the more technical DeFi-specific stuff. Reentrancy attacks, price oracle manipulation, access control failures. So, jumping a bit more into detail. Web2 scams in Web3. This is becoming more and more common. And it is the way most people are losing their money. Most of the time, if you're interacting with a site, if you're interacting with the blockchain, you're doing it through some website, some kind of web app, and this becomes susceptible to all the classic Web2 vulnerabilities. If someone can get in between you and the transaction you're sending, they can manipulate your funds. If someone sends you a fake link by email and you follow it, and you go to metamask.com instead of metamask.io, that way they can either steal your password, steal your private keys, change the transactions you are sending, and you have all your standard phishing attacks. If you get a random message on Telegram from your boss telling you to transfer all your funds to this wallet, that's probably not a good idea. Going a bit more into some of the Web3 stuff, the stuff that's a bit more technical. These are stuff we've seen doing various audits and real-world problems where a lot of funds have been stolen so far. One common type of attack is called the reentrancy attack. Essentially, what happens is whilst the function is running, it makes a call to an external contract, and then this external contract calls back to that first function before it's finished running. As an example, your protocol might have a function to withdraw user funds. You might call this function and say, I would like to withdraw $100. At the start of the function call, it checks your balance. And it checks, do you have $100 to withdraw? You do. It performs a transfer and sends $100 to your account. But it hasn't updated your balance yet. As soon as the transfer takes place, some contract calls that function again, and again asks, I'd like to withdraw $100. It checks, do you have $100 in your balance? Because we haven't updated the balance yet, because the first function never finished, the check passes. So it sends you another $100. And so on and so forth. Doing this, you can essentially drain most of the funds from a contract. This is what happened with the Uniswap hack, and they managed to extract all the value. These kind of hacks are a bit harder to prevent as a user. This really comes down to what the protocol developers have done. This is why it's so important to get your software audited, thoroughly checked by security experts. Some of these common attacks have easy solutions to them. But that's why it's so important to get everything thoroughly checked and to only interact with very reputable protocols. Some random protocol won't have done all the checks, and there's a good chance if you put your money in, there might be a vulnerability and someone can take it out. Aside from reentrancy, another common example is price manipulation. You have your Uniswap pools, you have your curve pools, and these all calculate the price of exchange based on what tokens, what funds are currently present in the pool. If you have pools that have low liquidity, there aren't many funds in them, it becomes easy for an attacker to flood the pool with funds, make it imbalanced, drastically shift the price, so that then the next person that comes along is suddenly trading at this completely different price than they expected. This is what happened with the standard IO hack. The main issue there was that they didn't put a limit on slippage. So when they went to swap with this pool, and all of a sudden the price was completely different than they expected, the swap went through anyway. They didn't have any checks. So easiest way to prevent this, always have a slippage limit, and ideally don't interact with pools that have low liquidity. Last type of vulnerability, Oracle manipulation. A lot of times our on-chain protocols need to access external data, either from the real world or from any other data source. If we're trying to access data from the real world, and there is some centralized server somewhere controlled by a company that's sending all this data, then we've sort of lost the point of it being decentralized, because we become reliant on a single point. And if this point fails, all of a sudden, or if someone manages to manipulate this server and send the wrong data, all of a sudden, your protocol is relying on the wrong info. Another example of Oracle misconfiguration this time was with the Bedrock UniBTC hack. What happened was that they had used the oracles incorrectly, and in the end, they ended up having a BTC and ETH exchange rate of 1:1. So someone managed to go in, swap their tokens at a rate of 1:1, and ended up pulling out most of the funds. This is why it's so important to keep things decentralized, not rely on anything specific or controlled by a single company. And always, again, use very well-audited and large protocols that they are reputable, are backed by proper companies, and have done all their proper security practices. Just to wrap up, a couple of other rapid-fire types of vulnerabilities you might come across. Flash loan manipulation. People can take out massive amounts of money, use that money to perform an attack very easily without any problems. Uninitialized proxies. If you have your proxy, someone can go in and take control of it before you do. Fake function calls. And airdrop scams. Airdrop scams comes back to more classics Web2 type vulnerabilities and social engineering. If you get a message on Discord telling you, sign up to this link and we'll send you 400 tokens, this is probably a red flag. That's about it. Questions? Okay, yes.
Thank you. So if you want to operate in, first of all, thank you for the presentation, it was really cool. If you want to operate in DeFi, how can you prevent yourself from being drained by, I don't know, whichever attack you might have? Like, I don't know, do you connect your cold wallet to your hot wallet? Do you transfer the LP tokens? What do you do if you want to operate?
There are two sort of sides. There's what you can do as a user and what you should do as a protocol developer. So as a protocol developer, your best bet is get a bunch of audits, have as many people looking at the code as you can. There are a bunch of standard practices that you should be following, and that's not a guarantee. There always might be a problem, but that gives you the best bet to make sure that your code is safe. As a user, it comes down to all the classic stuff that all the Web2 people have been saying forever. Don't follow bad links. Keep your wallet offline. If you're going to sign transactions, make sure the transaction you're signing is actually what you intend. What the website shows you, if you're using some kind of web app to interact, it might show you you're transferring 10 tokens, but the actual transaction, when you go to sign it, transfers 100.
You didn't mention this. I have actually a question because there's a guy here who wears a Bybit hoodie. Who has a Bybit hoodie here? FTX hoodie, okay. I saw someone with a Bybit t-shirt. What happened with Bybit? Because you're telling us not to click on wrong links and not use the same laptop for porn and Web3, right? But Bybit, they lost 1.4 billion. And they are not beginners. What happened there? Like, you tell us to check the transaction, but how can we do it?
So I'm actually going to redirect you to one of my colleagues, Tony, back there, because he's looked more into the Bybit hack than I have.
So I'm going to pass the microphone to you, Tony.
No, so Bybit TLDR, it was basically a supply chain attack on the front end, essentially. So if I remember correctly, the root cause analysis of that was that they were able to compromise an AWS session key from one of the Gnosis Safe developers. They were able to use that to deploy a malicious front end specifically targeting the Bybit safe, and were able to force the signers to sign malicious transactions because there's kind of issues related to Gnosis safe transactions and kind of hardware wallets. So that was a very sophisticated supply chain attack. It's not something necessarily that you're going to be targeted by. There is essentially an element of kind of security by irrelevance, which thankfully most of us have.
Lucky for us that we don't have 1.4 billion. Questions? Up with the hands so I can see where they are. Whoops. If you have any questions to Mark about Web3 security, because you want to keep your funds safe, now's the time. One question here, one question there. Okay.
So, might be bold, but my question is Web3 security a thing? Because let's get it straight. If we talk about traditional finance, if I want to hack a bank, I need to go through the intrusion detection system, the firewall, breach the server, security keys, FIDO keys, etc. If I want to hack a Web3 service, I either just crack the smart contract, which is quite easy because we are dealing with Turing complete languages, and having a full picture is kind of hard. Or I just crack the front end, change the smart contracts the front end points to, Badger DAO hack, and that's it. So the attack surface is so wider that it seems very, very hard to get the same security of traditional finance in Web3. Thank you.
So I'm going to sort of split it into two parts, because you mentioned the smart contracts and you mentioned the front-end part. In terms of the smart contracts, it's the same thing as any open source projects, really. Because most of the smart contracts and protocols tend to be open source, the level of trust and security is that you can go in and see exactly what's happening. And so can anyone else. Anyone else can go check the smart contracts, both good people and bad people. If you're malicious, you can go in and find the vulnerability. If you're well-intentioned, you can go in, find that same vulnerability, but block it off before it's a problem. As opposed to a traditional bank where they're running their own code, you don't know what it is, and you are essentially just trusting that it is secure. They have the extra security through obscurity, so the attacker cannot see the code and can't find vulnerabilities, but you have to just trust them. Whereas with the smart contracts, if the vulnerability is there, anyone can see it. In terms of someone hacking the front end or someone changing things from that side, at the end of the day, traditional banks have the same problem. If you log into HSBC and someone's hacked the site and they steal your password, you're losing your funds anyway.
I'm not, to be honest, because you get my password, but you have to go through the security system. Whereas if you have my smart contract changed, I can just sign and that's it. You can drain my wallet. You see the difference here. Like if I get your bank account details, I'll have to go through MFA, multi-factor authentication. If I get you to sign on my smart contract, I have full control over your funds.
So then this comes down to checking what transactions you are making and a bit of being careful as a user. Because again, in the same way that with traditional banks, you have your 2FA, but if it's coming through SMS, someone can intercept it. If someone performs a phishing attack on you and they manage to steal your recovery codes of your bank, or they get you to tell them what your first pet's name was, they can still get access and transfer your funds. There is no perfect solution, but this is something that applies to any technology, really.
Mark, tell us, are there any wallet solutions, both hardware and software, that you would recommend me? Because I'm in Web3, I'm in blockchain, but I am an idiot. What can I do to protect myself?
So I don't want to recommend any specific products, because I don't want you using something, there being a problem, and then you come along and blame me. But as just a general set of practices, cold wallets, keeping things offline, having your recovery codes nowhere online, nowhere that can be hacked. If you're doing really sensitive stuff, you might even want to use just a completely separate device so that you're sure that no one's put a virus on it or is getting in between you and the transaction you're making. Double check all the transactions you are making, make sure that the actual transaction hash you are signing is what you expect it to be.
But how do I do that? Because my wallet, I'm using a Trezor sometimes, among others. They don't show the actual transaction that I'm signing. This is like, I know like what Tony explained about Bybit, this is much more complex with like a complete different user interface that they faked. But I don't see all the transaction details if I click on my hardware wallet, for example.
I believe some hardware wallets can show you the actual transaction hash before you sign it. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but there are some that will show you. And you can simulate the transaction beforehand, then to make sure it's doing exactly what you expect it to do.
I will try. Are there any more questions? Do I see some hands? There's one question here.
Just out of curiosity, I think that your job is very appealing to many people. So my question is, how is your day at work? What do you do in your common working day?
So I'm one of the software developers. So in my case, like most software developers, it's not that much different Web 2, Web 3, and go in, fix whatever bugs there are, and repeat. What might be more interesting is perhaps some of our auditors. So because we are an audit company, we're working with many different protocols, all different types of technologies, different financial models, and it tends to change quite a bit. So 1 week we're working on perpetuals, the next they've come to us with this new maths formula that they claim will change the world or whatever. And every time you'll have a team of 2 or 3 auditors. They take on this project, depending on the size. It could be anywhere from 3 days of work to a month, 2 months of work. And they start going through the code. Start reading through it, line by line, function by function, trying to understand exactly what it can do. First step is just to understand what it does. Once they've finished that phase of the audit, then they take a more adversarial approach, trying to find, okay, how could we manipulate these functions to either drain funds or to deny service? It's quite interesting because they get to look at all kinds of projects, and some people come up with really out there ideas. So it's a very varied thing day to day.
And how much of your time you spend learning and documenting yourself?
We take a document as you go along.
No, like in studying and keeping up to what's new.
Oh, so usually it ends up happening in the off cycles. So especially with, again, more with the auditors, they'll be assigned onto an audit for a week. Then they'll have a few days off before the next audit, and this is their time to study up, learn new things, keep up with things. But then it's always going on in the background as well.
Next question here, and if you don't put your hand up now so I can see them and we know who has a question, this might be the last question and we're going to wrap it up. To see you at the bar.
Thank you for the presentation. I gotta say the way you were presenting it, that you make it sound that it's very expensive to get an audit on your protocol or on your project. I can understand that big companies like can afford it, but how can you? First of all, does small project can approach you first, and second, how do you value your service? I mean, to price it. How do you price your service to those small?
So I'm going to direct you to our business guy.
So expensive. Expensive is a way of determining, right? Yeah. What do you mean expensive? Huh? A small project can approach us, of course. Also, a small project, there is also subsidiary from chain, like Oasis protocol or many other. Uniswap, sorry. I'm not used to it, guys. And so it's possible to get subsidies to get audit paid. What was the second question? Expensive, unapproachable?
How do you price the service?
When you see the guys over there, these 3 gentlemen there, we paid them by the day. So we need to know how much hours, or many days, or many weeks, or months I need to look at your code.
So in advance, you know in advance how much time you will spend, or you will charge
we
after?
Estimate. No, we estimate how much time we're going to spend on your code because we give you an estimation. Your code is about 2 lines, we need 10 minutes. The code is about 2,000 lines, we need 2 months or whatever.
I see. I understand that.
That's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that you can afford to save money with Web3 security. Boom. There's the sales pitch. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mark. The Dedaub team is going to be around, so if you have some questions for them, today is the special day where they are allowed out of the basement, where they don't have to. Now is the chance to talk to them. only on Wednesday. We are going to be here next Wednesday. Maybe they join us again. Thank you very much and see you next week. I really put it for 10 minutes.